as a freshman in college, I had created an iPhone app called Scan. I took that app onto Shark Tank, did my best to pitch it, and all of them said no. We ended up selling our app for $54 million to Snapchat.
Damn.
We felt like we won the lottery. And it's kind of that question of like, what would you do with your life if you won the lottery? The word influencer didn't exist yet, but we started reaching out to different brands, airlines, hotels, anyone hoping that they would work with us. And we were able to eventually start getting like discounts on travel and then some like free travel. And eventually it started getting like paid gigs. This year marks our 10 years since we left home.
This is Creator, the podcast from Matador Network. I'm your host, Ross Borden, and I believe creators are the future of all global advertising. So join me as I sit down with top creators to hear about how they got started, the challenges they've overcome, and the tips you need to become a full-time creator. All right, welcome back to another episode of Creator, the podcast. Today we have Garrett Gee of the Bucket List family. Garrett and his wife Jessica have amassed over 5 million followers across platforms over the last 10 years as they've traveled to over 100 countries with their 3 children. Garrett, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Grateful to be here.
So why do big trips with little kids? Why build an entire life around travel?
Ooh, I like your phrasing of that. Big trips with little kids. Don't be surprised if you see that in the upcoming like title of a YouTube video. That's really good. Well done. You're good at your job. You know what? I have a great answer for that because a lot of people early on would kind of give us the judgment of, man, traveling with little kids must like ruin a trip. And we found it to be really just the opposite, where when you're traveling with little kids, it just adds a new element. Literally, they notice little things. Like little kids will notice the sweet, minor things in a trip that just make you appreciate the trips and the travels even more. But also we do a lot of traveling around wildlife, and it's really cool to see how wildlife reacts differently when little kids are around. We haven't shared this content yet, but we recently did an adventure swimming with killer whales in the Sea of Cortez, like out in the wild. And I was in the water first, and these orca whales were just zooming by. And then the little kids dropped in the water, and they like literally stopped, turned around, and came back to us like, oh, what are these little creatures?
Damn. When they stopped and turned around, was there any part of you that was like, oh God, is something bad about this kid? I'm always amazed that killer whales are so tolerant and non-violent to humans, because you see how they treat other animals who are their prey, like seals or penguins. They like not only kill them, they flip them around and toy with them. They're like the ultimate apex predator. So I would like, were any of you scared at all in the water with them?
You know, it's funny because for me, I literally just put my trust in the facts that there's never been a recorded like killing of a killer whale, killing a human in the wild. It has happened multiple times in captivity, but that's where like humans are more guilty than they are. But in the wild, it never. So I just put my trust fully in that. And I also will say I've done enough of this like wildlife encounters that a good example is just anytime you're in with sharks, where you can get in the water and pretty quickly see like, oh, I should not be in the water with this shark, or this shark is very chill and docile. So a lot of it's just like reading the nature of the animal.
The behavior, right.
We were with some friends, and another dad with his kids were on the boat. And he looks at me as we got closer and closer to the whales, and he's like, hey, are you putting your kids in the water? And I was like, absolutely. I do not want them to miss this experience. And then you could tell he was like not there mentally.
Yeah. He's like, and now I have to.
Well,
my kids can't miss out.
I don't want my kids to miss out, and Garrett's kids experience it, but you could tell he was not planning on it until I said, let's go for it. So it was a cool experience.
So were you guys, I assume you were at the Sea of Cortez specifically to swim with the orcas, or was that like you'd be gone there for that?
That was the goal, was to hopefully see and swim with the killer whales. And goodness, we were there for 7 days. And for 6 days, we were on the water from probably 7 a.m. to, 3 or 4 p.m., just striking out, not seeing At this point, when I had never seen them before. So at this point, I'm like, orcas are killer.
Trips a bust.
Yeah, like they don't really exist. There's no life here. And then finally, on the very, very last day, it happened.
Yeah, it's funny because I know you're a big Tonga guy and you go with the whole family, and we'll talk about the whole bucket list collection in a little bit, but I know that you've been going back over and over to Tonga year after year, and you've had the kids in the water with the humpbacks there. And with that, I mean, I have had days of like really bad water where it's like raining and everyone's freezing on the boat and you can't find a good sighting. But I've also had days out there where you kind of like, oh, there's another spout, go over there, and it's just easy and you're in there. But with orcas, you're saying more hunting around and trying to find them. It was like
Oh, for sure.
harder to find
Yeah.
them.
I would equate it like blue whales, orcas, and sperm whales are all very difficult to swim with just because they move so quickly. And when they take a breath, especially like sperm whales or blue whales, like they could be down for like 40 minutes at a time and have moved
Right.
like kilometers in that time, time frame. Whereas humpback whales are much more predictable. And so, yeah, if someone would have a higher percentage chance swimming with the humpbacks than the orcas. But all of this, I have really loved what my kids have learned from the experiences wildlife, where you can't force something. You can't buy your way into like an experience like this. It really comes down to like the universe and Mother Nature,
Yeah.
and you get what you get, and you got to be
Yeah.
very patient and grateful for whatever you get, big or small.
Yeah, I love that. And that's so true with any wildlife. It's like you're not ordering it on a catalog. You're not showing up to a theme park and getting like a guaranteed experience. You got to get lucky, and you got to be, which is all the more exciting when you do have that
Oh my gosh,
incredible
the end
sighting.
reward is for sure. It was funny because the friend who I traveled with, for the sake of his reputation on this specific topic, I'm not going to say his name, but he's quite wealthy, and he definitely tried to like buy his way into this situation where he's like, "Hey, let's go ahead and like hire a few choppers and get a few more boats on the water and like everything and just like go for it." And I was like, "Sorry, bro, like that's not how it works. And if anything, you're going to upset the universe, and you gotta just go about it the old fashioned way, let's call it." And that was his attitude on day one. It was really cool to see once it finally happened. Afterwards, I remember we were at a cafe and someone else was like, "This is a random place in the world. Like, what are you guys doing here?" And we explained we're there to swim with the whales. And they're like, "Oh, really? We tried today and we didn't see anything. Like, it was kind of a bust." And my friend, he went from like, "I must see him now, and how do I pay extra money to see them now?" to he responded to that person in the cafe being like, "You know what? It really comes down to patience and just seeing what the universe brings your way." And I'm looking at him being like, "Oh, you've come so far, my friend."
You went from choppers and drones 5 days ago to got to be patient and be one with nature. Good for him though. That's what it's all about. He grew in that experience.
I was proud of him.
Well, that's really cool, man. I always think of swimming with orcas as like going to like Norway or like cold water destinations. But I mean, I guess they're just depending on the time of year, they're all over the place. I didn't
Yeah,
realize they were
and
down in
that's
Sea
another reason why it's
Cortez.
difficult because they are shoot, what's the word? They're just all over the planet, right? They go where the food is because some are like residential, but yeah, most, I mean, they're all over the place. So if you were wanting to swim with killer whales, probably the most popular place where it's legal and a bit more predictable would be Norway, but you're doing that in the winter. I think November, December, January, and lighting is very limited. So you have like 3, maybe 4 hours of daylight, and the water's
Right.
freezing cold. So you're like
Freezing.
straight up
Yeah.
like dry suit or thick wetsuit. It's tough. And so it's also very expensive. So I had put it on my list of like, shoot, I want to go and experience orcas. If I need to, I will go there. But first, let me try my luck at somewhere with warmer, more clear waters.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. That's on the list now. So yeah, and I think going back to traveling with kids, I think the reason you have 3 kids, right? And I can't believe
Mhm.
how old they've gotten because I've been following you since Cali and Manila were like tiny, and now they're like growing up so fast. I was just watching the work that we did with you for Jeep, and I'm like, man, these kids are growing up fast. So, but when you guys started, you actually, how old were the kids? Or Cali was not
So let's
even.
see. Callie was not even born. Manila was 10 months, took his first steps like the week that we left home. And then Dorothy was about to turn 3.
Wow. What do you say to people who are like, I could never travel with like really little kids? Like, because I feel like there's two things that people say. One is that it's just difficult. Like little kids, sometimes toddlers or babies, even short trips are seen as difficult. And two, people are like, oh, they'll never remember it, especially to go on these like big epic trips, which I always kind of like shake my head at that one because I've traveled with my kids when they were really young, and I like because they live the experience. I feel like it has an imprint on them, and they remember more than you think, and they definitely benefit from it, right? It's the ultimate education. But what do you say when people are kind of like blown away on taking these like super epic trips, especially when your kids were like much younger?
I think if you were to go back like from like the root of that question of like how much of your life are you going to stop living because you had kids? For my wife and I, the answer is like zero. We're living life like full steam ahead, and we're bringing our kids along with us. Like everything we do, we think of it as like full family, but also at the same time, like my wife and I have continued to travel a lot without our kids. Like we still do probably 2 or 3 trips a year with no kids. And so that's why I say take it back to just like parenting as a whole of like, are you going to just stop your own passions and hobbies and like dreams because of having kids? And that's not how my wife and I look at it. And then I would say it's like, if you want to be a family that continues to travel and adventure, you got to start your kids young. Like the younger, the better, especially because, man, we didn't know this going into it, but the age that our kids were is probably the most difficult. Probably from that like 1.5 to 3 years old is when traveling with a child is the most difficult, but is a whole lot easier if they're already used to it because you started them from like infant, very young age. So that's usually our default answer is like travel with kids. It's amazing and start them young. I will say there's been enough flights where I've kind of eaten my words and looked at like other families and their misbehaved kids and been like, you guys should never travel. You guys are not good enough for this.
Especially, please don't sit next to us. I'm always blown away when like there's like a baby like screaming and they're just the parents just like not like I would be up panicking. Like I would be like walking around, pacing around, like it's okay, try to distract them. Some people just sit there and their kids are screaming and you're like, do you want help? Do you want maybe to try and get this under control? They just like don't even care. I'm always blown
Oh,
away
for
by
sure.
that.
Yeah.
So what about take us even further back? You were an entrepreneur. Like what is your story that kicked this whole thing off? Because you sold a company, you went on Shark Tank, like tell the whole like origin story of you as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so the quick version of it is when I was a freshman in college, Jess and we got married quite young. I think she was 22 and I was 21. And we both served Mormon missions. That's where we met in Russia, came home, got married. And so like in the Mormon world, your like freshman year starts a bit later than the rest of the world because you took 2 years off to go do a church mission. And so yeah, I came home from that. We got married. And then as a freshman in college, I had created an iPhone app called Scan. And I took that app onto Shark Tank, did my best to pitch it, and all of them said no. And I was pretty heartbroken, but that didn't last too long because probably like 2 months later, I got an email from Snapchat asking to meet with me. And literally one meeting, it was like an hour-long meeting, and it ended with an offer to buy it from us. And so, yeah, we ended up selling our app for $54 million to Snapchat. And that's what
Damn.
sparked the question of what do we do next in life? I mean, it sounds weird to say it. Like, I'll just say it like it is because we were very young at the time. We felt like we won the lottery. And it's kind of that question of like, what would you do with your life if you won the lottery? And it's like a fun question to just like dream about. And we feel like we got to live it. We are very proud of the fact though, because a lot of people assume that like, oh, we made that money and then we went and just splurged and traveled the world, just like burning through that money. But we're very proud of the fact that because I had people close to me in my life who had a lot of money and lost it all, I knew that, that money doesn't last forever. And so we made the very mindful decision to set the money aside and go do, in the famous last words, a little bit of traveling while we could figure out like what's life about and what do we want our future to look like. But in the meantime, let's not touch that money. And so we decided to, and Jess was the one, she's very moderate, and she decided to do a little bit of traveling. I'm the extreme one that's like, we're going to go on a trip around the world, we're going to sell everything and leave our house and become these vagabonds. And so we did. And it was from that like yard sale and leaving house that got us about $43,000 in our bank account. And that became our travel money. And we're going to travel as long as that lasts. And this was 2015. That's also when like the word influencer didn't exist yet, but we
Right.
started reaching out to different brands, airlines, hotels, anyone hoping that they would work with us in exchange for exposure on our YouTube and our Instagram that had all of like 12 subscribers.
Yeah.
Needless to say, those pitches didn't usually go well, but our timing was right. So we kind of rode that wave as like social media and influencer work like grew. We were there at like the cusp of it, and we were able to eventually start getting like discounts on travel and then some like free travel, and eventually it started getting like paid gigs, and it became our career, and we were able to travel now years and years. Actually, this year marks our 10 years since we left home.
Amazing. Yeah. You guys were early. You guys were the pioneers of travel creators for sure.
Very much thanks to you and Matador, and we didn't need to dip into that savings.
You didn't win the lottery. You earned the lottery because you sold a company that you created. So I mean that's amazing. But I do think that's a perception, and that's kind of what I figured when I first met you guys is that you had this huge exit with the Snapchat acquisition, and that's what's fueled your travel. But you're saying you put that money aside, you put together whatever 45K, and that was your travel money, and you started from there.
Yeah, and we did it again. Like winning the lottery or earning it with Scan and Snapchat, my iPhone app. Yeah, we repeated that with the Bucket List family. We never dipped into that savings. We started from $45,000 and made it happen.
Amazing, man. Congratulations. And so, what you guys have been in I almost seems like longer than 10 years that I've been following you, but you've been doing that, for, starting with basically nothing in terms of your following, although I'm sure an incredible itinerary. What was the first place? What were like when you're like looking at the world map and you're like, we could go anywhere and do anything. What did you guys actually decide to do for that first trip?
It was Tonga. We wanted to go swim with the humpback whales in Tonga. And so that was stop one, and then New Zealand, and then Australia, and then up into Asia.
And then what have been, whether it was like a big brand deal, or I know you have big partnerships with Nat Geo and Disney, what have been like the other sort of like watershed moments for your career as creators that's allowed you guys to do different things? Like what was, you started creating content, you're building YouTube, you're building Instagram. What else was it? Or was it just like a slow build all the way up that sort of got you guys to the next level?
I'll give credit to Teva Sandals. They were the first company to give us product. They didn't pay us, but they just gave us some sandals. Shout out.
Nice.
I remember it was actually Coca-Cola who, I feel bad saying this. Coca-Cola was our first paid deal. They paid us, I think, $600. And my wife and I, we don't drink Coca-Cola. To date, I have never tasted Coca-Cola, but I poured it out and I filled it with water and like took photos and videos with that. And we were so grateful that a brand was willing to work with us. And so we feel like fakes and frauds for having done that. Definitely sold our soul for that one. But we had to start somewhere, and we learned our lesson. We since then have been much more genuine to our values.
Only the authentic brands that you actually like and use in your real life. What about the other stuff?
I'll say the big ones. It was a really big deal for us when we got to work with Airbnb. Oh man, I would be so curious to meet with their marketing team again and see like what they're doing nowadays, because I think it was maybe 2017. We signed a deal with them to do a year's worth of travel. And this was the dream scenario, because we've worked with a lot with like Four Seasons and Ritz-Carlton and Amman properties, like these big bougie properties. And a lot of times people would give us kind of some flack online saying like, oh, you guys are like out of touch and unrealistic. And we'd be like, no, guys, you don't understand. Like smaller motels or like hostels, like they don't have budget to work with us. So we could go and pay $50 a night to stay at this motel, or we can stay at Ritz-Carlton for free because they have budget. So like us staying at the Ritz-Carlton is actually us being cheap and frugal. Like you're calling us out of touch and you don't understand like, you know,
The realities that you're still trying to make a
you don't
business out of
understand
this and
how
not
frugal
like
we
spend
are.
money. Yeah.
But Airbnb was a beautiful thing because we do think there's a really cool way to experience different cultures is to stay in these different, and like, to stay in a home is a really cool thing, but also on Airbnb, you can find like you're going to Amsterdam, you can stay in like a houseboat on the canal, or in Norway, like those cabins with the grass growing on the roofs. So we did that for a full year where they just opened up their catalog and said, stay wherever you want to stay on our dime. That was maybe one of our favorite years of travel because of how that played out.
Yeah, and I mean, it would be good. I mean, maybe we should bring you to Airbnb again. I actually just got back from New York last night, and we saw the CEO Brian Chesky give a talk about what they're doing for like the next 3 years, and they're doubling down on experiences, which they started to do before pandemic, and then the pandemic hit. That all went to zero. They almost lost their business. They had to borrow a bunch of money. They had to cover their guests for all the cancellations. So now they're like reloading that, and they want to do, I think kind of what you're talking about. Like, I agree. Staying at an Airbnb, you get more of a cultural experience. You can interact with locals more easily. You feel like you're part of that city or that town more than staying at a big hotel. But now they're even doing, services, tours, people come and cook for you, like different things on top of it. So
I really look up to Brian. I love Airbnb and what they're doing. I think they're just the coolest combo of like, as AI and technology just like evolves and literally like consumes our lives, they're a cool funnel where they can like bring it back to real life experiences. I mean, that's a lot of our thesis and mindset with the bucket list collection is at the end of the day, all this content that we're creating, everything that we're doing is all for naught if we don't inspire families to like get out there and have their own adventurous experiences together. And so that's when we earlier this year launched the bucket list collection, our different destinations and properties where you can go and stay on our private island and swim with whales, or go to our Canadian property and experience like the grizzlies and the orcas up there. And so we'll see. We're building it as if it's our own, baby that will grow and raise forever. But I really do think there's potential that someday the bucket list collection could live within an Airbnb or something of the sort. We'll see.
there's a lot to unpack there. And I was going to bring up bucket list collection, but like you guys recently bought, when I saw you in Reno, Tahoe at Creator Camp recently, you had recently bought 2 islands in like a very short period of time. So you are basically launching your own global hospitality brand. Is that right?
Yeah,
Is that how
correct.
you'd explain it?
Yeah, for sure. And when we think about it, is like there's a lot of different hospitality brands out there, and we're not trying to compete with like the Marriotts or the Hyatts of the world. We're not trying to be the biggest or the fanciest, but we're going like hard the other direction. Where we're trying to be like go after the most unique bucket list experiences on the planet, where all the money in the world wouldn't be able to buy you what we're able to like provide. And that's the perks of being the bucket list family. We've truly traveled the globe, seen the best that this planet has to offer, and then just like hand selected the absolute best one. So when I saw you in Reno, we had purchased private island in Tonga to swim with the humpbacks, the Wilderness Wildlife Lodge in Canada, and then I think that's all we had at this point.
Yeah.
And we're in the process of closing a couple more, like literally this week.
Damn. What can you share what those are or what the locations are?
Good question. I'll say this. One of them is we purchased land in Africa where we're going to, from scratch, build the first and best family-focused safari lodge. There's a lot of great safari lodges out there. We're going to create the first that is like built around and for families, so that families, no matter how young your kids are, can go and have like a safe safari experience.
Amazing, man. Is that in Tanzania?
Kenya? I'll let
South
that
Africa?
surprise. Yeah,
All right. Okay. We'll stay tuned on that. So building, and I'm going to have a similar question because I want to hear about all these different lodges you guys are building or investing in or improving. This one in somewhere in Africa is just a piece of land. There's no lodge. There's no existing lodge on it right now.
Yeah.
So is that intimidating? Like, how does one go about without actually at least being there full time? How the are you building a lodge from scratch in Africa?
All of this has just been us like feeling in the dark, like learning along the way because yeah, we've never owned any of this. I'll say the Tonga and the Canada, those were existing resorts. They're already like fantastic places. And it's interesting because we want to renovate and improve them, but we need to be careful about it because we don't want to change them. Like the unique character of these places is what drew us to them in the first place and why we acquired them. And so we
Right.
got to be very careful to not just like ruin them. Like the culture there is so ingrained in what they currently are. So we're doing that like slowly but surely, which I mean, this is, I think my wife Jessica spoke to you about this and we should discuss this more because we're kind of scheming something of a TV show where imagine like the Chip and Joanna Gaines Extreme Home Makeover, except
Yeah.
we're not renovating a house, we're renovating an entire like private island boutique resort. And so that is, you know, in the back of our minds. But this one for Tanzania, it's tough to do anything remotely from afar in foreign lands. It's just it's been a crazy experience.
What an incredible challenge. And I have been talking to Jess about that. And I think, I mean, that is like, who wouldn't want to watch that show? Like, so, like the home makeover in Tonga or in the Great Bear Rainforest. So what were those both places that you guys had been on your own? And you're like, see, this is the type of place that we want to invest in and like make into a member of the bucket list collection. Like,
You know
had you
what?
been there as travelers before?
Yeah, and it actually didn't start because I'm kind of making it sound like we had this like business idea and like pursued it. It actually started with a different mindset. We had traveled to these places, and I remember once particularly where it was so special. And through the hardships of like COVID and a hurricane, like we saw them struggling to keep it open. And a lot of these places, like the nearby village, lives and dies based off of the success of this boutique resort. And so it was us wanting to like help the local people and preserve this special place and just not see
This
it
is
die.
Tonga. This is the Tonga one.
And also, we didn't want to see a bigger developer come in and just like trash it and put a
Bulldoze the entire thing.
gross
Yeah.
building on it and just exploit it for everything it's worth. And so it was that like preservation and conservation mindset that actually started all of this. And once we found one, then it like that mindset was like, oh shoot, what other places are out there that we want to preserve in a special way? And so we are very careful not to consider ourselves like owners of these places, but better said, like stewards. And it's our job to try to like protect them and conserve them as best possible.
Yeah, that do you fly into Vavau when you get to your place in Tonga?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I've been a couple times to the Blue Lagoon. I don't know if you know those guys, the
Yeah.
Potts brothers,
Oh,
but
cool. You've driven past our island for sure then, you know, having been in that area. And you know the beauty of it because if you're staying there in town in Vava'u, it's quite the trek, you know, maybe 40 minutes to an hour before you're out amongst the whales. But if you can
exactly.
stay out there on one of those outer islands, like you're out amongst them. They sent me a photo. We have some friends on our island right now, and they sent us a photo. It's like directly from the beach, and it's just like a football's throw away, and there's the whales.
Yeah, they cruise right in there. It's insane. And I'm obsessed with safari, but like in African safaris and all other, wildlife experiences, but I don't think anything for me can top being in the water with the 60,000 pound mama humpback and her calf. And the calf is like, as you know, very curious, coming right up to you. And the calf is like 2,000 pounds at least. It's just like, there's nothing else like it. I mean, it's just the most mind blowing
No.
experience.
Hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm really excited to check out what you guys are building. So, what for the first ones that you've invested in, that's Tonga and the Great Bear Rainforest, right? The one in
Yep.
BC.
Mhm. Yep. There in British
Um,
Columbia, Canada.
where are you like what are the you said your friends are at the Tonga property now. Are you guys doing improvements and development or are they like open for business and bookings right now?
Both of them are currently open for bookings. The tough thing is, like, we promote full family adventure, but both of them currently run not so kid friendly. So there is some urgency to do the renovations as quickly as possible so that we can make them more family friendly. But like I said, we see this as just like a timeless project and we don't want to rush anything. We believe that the best things in life are slow cooked. And so we're currently working with like designers and architects. We've got a lot on our plates. We're creating a bucket list
Yes.
cartoon, and as part of that bucket list cartoon, so like an animated cartoon TV series, uh, there will be an episode about Canada, an episode about Tonga. Basically, each episode takes you from a different country or culture around the world. And the one about Tonga, as we design, the characters and the huts and all of it, we're basing it off of our island. And so it's just a funny thing because I'm working with like an architect and a cartoon designer at the same time. And like those designs need to like line up. But it's really cool because the new designs for the villas straight up look like, if you were to imagine private island with like Swiss Family Robinson treehouse, like really magical kids
Yeah.
dreamland of a hut. That's what we're going to turn it into.
Unreal. And now you have the vertical marketing integration with a cartoon. Let's talk about that. Like you guys have so much going on. It's crazy. So what was that idea? You guys raised money, I think, from some of your followers to make that. And I'm sure you have partners on the media side, but tell me about that whole thing. How did that come to be and what is it now?
Totally. So we currently do not have a partner on the media side, and that's been part of the reason. I'll take you kind of like chronologically how it went down. I think it was around COVID that my wife and I were having this like heart to heart about like what is life and the future of social media and how much do we want our kids in front of the camera or not as they get older. And we basically had decided that we're so proud of what we've built and the positive message that we put out into the world that we don't ever want to like turn it off. But we also, being mindful parents, don't want to like force anything upon our kids. So that's when the idea was born, like, what if we created this cartoon that could continue to share our message and our story, but it would at least give the kids the freedom to like, hey, if you want to continue to be a part of this, for sure. But if you don't, like, go ahead right off into the sunset. And so that's when the idea was born. And we created this video sharing the vision of it and the idea of it with our audience. And the video is actually called like, here's 3 reasons not to invest. And if I were to try to remember off the top of my head, it was startups and any new project or venture is risky.
Super
I let
risky,
our
yeah.
audience know this is not going to be my top priority, that I'm at a place in my life where I just want to spend time with my wife and kids. And I continue to do like these creative ventures on the side, but it's not my top priority. My family is. And then the third one was just my lack of an experience. I've never created a cartoon before. And that video did really well. And we ended up having $43 million committed to our project in the first 24 hours of that video going live. And
Oh my God.
blew our expectations out of the water. And really, we weren't even prepared for that. Like, what were we going to do with that? And so we ended up kind of following up with our audience and putting a cap, like, please, I know you committed, $100,000, but we're going to cap you at literally $100. So like the most we took from our audience was $100, not 100,000, like $100. But we had 30,000 people contribute that. And then we did work with a few other like bigger investors that I'd worked with in my past that funded my iPhone app. And so we ended up raising a total of $10 million to go make this cartoon happen. That was 3 or more years ago. And so we do have like 30,000 people knocking on our door being like, yo, where's the cartoon?
Where's the cartoon?
And I'm over there like stressing, being like, one, reminder, this is not my top priority.
Not the first priority.
I'm a dad, and it's been really tough because I feel this obligation to everyone who invested money to like make it a success. And so there's this like push and pull of like, I am tempted to just heads down, focus on the work of things and be lesser of a father and a family man. But I'm like, no. That would make me such a hypocrite. I'm literally creating a cartoon about people who like learn these life lessons from different cultures around the world. And at the end of the day, like moral of the story is family and community. Like I need to be that person that we're preaching about. So I have to like kind of turn off the noise and just like, I promise you, I'm going to make the most of this. I'm going to make it a success, but I need to do it in my own like timeline. And I also can't respond to like 30,000 people. So it's just like a lot of noise and expectations coming my way. And I just have to like trust the process and keep working my hardest on it. And it's getting there. Like literally, I mean, even just this morning, was on pitch meetings showing like, hey, here's the scripts that we've written, the characters that we've designed, and our first storyboard where you can like kind of experience a janky version of episode 1. like it's taken us a really long time and a lot of money to get here, but I'm really proud of what we're creating and how far we've come.
And you're meeting now when you're doing the pitch meetings, you're meeting with distributors basically.
That's the stage we're at now, where for us to like put the final touches and like hit go on production is there's kind of two things that need to happen. Is we would need a distributor partner like a Netflix, an Apple, Disney Plus, something of the sort. There is the opportunity for us to just stream it independently on YouTube. So we're kind of like, entertaining both paths and seeing which one is the better fit for us. A lot of this has been from the struggle of, because I know what we want to create and the message that we want to share, we have to be careful about like, had we gotten in bed with one of these big streamers too early, they would have a lot of control.
Full creative control.
Yeah. And so if we went, I'm going to share with you like the lamest example, but it kind of proves my point, where in this Tonga episode, there's a situation where these big Tongans invite the family to go with them to church. And already there's going to be different streamers that being like, how much do you share religion or do you not? I'm like, well, we're going to stick true to that culture, and every culture relates to religion differently. And that's the beauty of this world. So let us share the variation that is these different cultures. And so when we've gotten this invite to church, there's these three big guys sitting in the front of this like truck bed. And we, the family, our kids included, climbed to this truck bed and drove down this small dirt road to their local church. And already there's going to be these big networks that be like, wait, you are not making a cartoon about kids that are not wearing seatbelts.
Oh my God.
To
Yeah,
you, that's
totally.
very important. But to the local Tongans, like they don't blink an eye at that. So like, again, it's not that we're anti-seatbelts, but we like to show like the different cultures are at different stages of, life and what's important to them, what's available to them. I don't know in all my times going to Tonga if I've ever seen a seatbelt. So like, it's just us wanting to stay true to the authenticity of these stories, cultures, and experiences has just made it difficult of how early we could or couldn't do a deal with these streamers. So
yeah, that's really interesting, and I think I think it's a good point. And it's good that you waited to not give up that creative control, where the stories would be kind of watered down, and those authentic things that are in the cartoon that you guys have probably lived with real people in these places are not like eliminated due to like legal reasons or potential backlash. I was actually going to ask you though, like you guys are out. I would define you as like you're raising brave kids, you're letting your kids, even from when they're really young, take acceptable risks with you right there, but jumping in the water with orca or swimming with sharks or surfing waves or whatever at 2 or 3 years old. Like most people also have an immediate knee-jerk reaction of like, that's dangerous. And I just know how like Instagram works, and I feel like comments are, I just like, it's an eye roll for me because I actually love that style of raising kids. But like, has that been a challenge, or how have you dealt with that?
Yeah, for sure. It was funny. Like I was all over the media. It was crazy how far and wide this news story spread. A lot of my family like took screenshots of me on the news throwing my kid off a cliff as we were teaching him to cliff jump there in Lake Powell, Utah. And then some other friends literally made me a t-shirt. They gave it to me last week. It says cliff thrower. But let me again take a step back of like the why to all of this in the world of parenting. And for us, like we're trying to teach our kids to be brave, or in other words, we're trying to teach them to be like confident, and not just confident, like truly like deep within their souls, like inner confidence to the max. And not for the sake of, it's not like I'm trying to raise my kids like, ooh, I hope my kids someday jump off the highest cliffs and do the most daring things. Like it's not that at all. It's the more important things of like, an example would be my kids just started school this year. And on the first week of school, I told them, hey, I know you're nervous. You're going to a new school, but you need to be brave enough not to just worry about yourself. But if you see a kid who's sitting alone at lunch, you need to go talk to them because you might be feeling lonely, but imagine how they're feeling. So stop thinking about yourself and think of others. That's scary for a child. Like, I remember what it was. In a way, you could say I'm trying to raise my kids to be the child that I wish I was. I was the shy kid. I was the lonely kid. And I also wasn't befriending the other lonely kids. And so how often it requires bravery and courage to just do the right thing in life, not like the big brave daredevil thing, but just the right thing in life. That's what I'm trying to raise is like good kids, good humans. And guess what? In today's world, that takes a lot of bravery. So it just happens to be fun and you know, as we're traveling, like the different scenarios, like what does bravery mean when you're in Lake Powell cliff jumping, or in Mexico swimming with killer whales, or just in Japan trying to make friends with kids that don't speak your same language.
How have your kids like developed with, you know, they've kind of, I mean, it's really, they haven't had cameras in their face. They've just had dad taking cell phone videos for most of it. When we shot with you guys for Jeep about a month ago, you know, the kids are like, they seem like naturals. They're totally confident in front of the camera, whatever. I wasn't on set for that, but what is their take on this? You and Jess talked and said, do we really want, you know, our kids on camera as they get into this next stage of their childhoods? Maybe not. That's why you sort of pivoting towards this cartoon, but like, what has it been like for your kids, you know, from their POV, traveling around the world, having, you know, all these people seeing their adventures? Has it been exciting or intimidating, or like, what's their take been on that?
You know, it's definitely evolved over time because when we started this in 2015 and the word influencer didn't exist, like we truly started all of it as like the videos I'm saying as a family journal. I'm a big time journal keeper. So like, yeah, these started as our family home videos. And as we saw that they had the ability to like fund our travels and bring more and more experiences into our lives, then we started to be more like strategic about it. And we are aware a lot of people are watching. And yes, this is a business, but at its core, these are still our home videos. So when I'm making a video, I remember watching something, maybe it was like Mr. Beast or something, and they were talking about like, it all starts with like the thumbnail. We plan out the thumbnail, and based on that viral thumbnail, then we strategize like what the video is going to be back. We're just completely the opposite way. It's like, I'm going to enjoy this experience with my kids. Like any or most parents, I'm going to capture it just for the memories. And then I'm going to use my editing and storytelling skills to try to like concoct something out of it that we can share online. And hopefully it'll do well so that our business and our lifestyle can continue. Because that to me is what has been our favorite part of all of this. It's been financially successful and done really well for us. But the thing that we truly like that keeps us going and why we don't turn this off is because of the amount of experiences it's brought into our lives. I mean, it was last year, I think, that we got to go and have 25 days in Antarctica. We're just too frugal of humans. Like, I don't know if we would have ever like splurged and spent the money required to have that kind of experience without the way that we've done it. Like, that's just the truth of it. And so it's through our like hard work and entrepreneurship that we've been able to provide that experience to our kids. Otherwise, I think we're just too frugal to have ever done it otherwise.
How was Antarctica? I've never been there, never done that trip. Our creative director went earlier this year and I was looking at his videos. Damn, I got to do that.
There's only so many places on our planet that are still as raw and untouched, right? Whether it comes to, I would say like the most raw and untouched culture that we've experienced thus far is Bhutan there in Asia. And then the most raw and untouched land has got to be there in Antarctica. You just feel like you are experiencing something for the first time. Like, oh, no humans have ever been here right now in this moment. Like, that's what it feels like.
Did Jess tell me you were sleepwalking on the boat or something like that? What was that story?
Yeah, I mean, so I grew up, I have narcolepsy, and growing up, I would sleepwalk on like literally a daily basis. And I don't know if this is common amongst people with narcolepsy, but I've grown out of it as I've gotten older, better. Like I've learned to control it, and I now only sleepwalk, I don't know, maybe a few times a year. It's become more and more rare as I get older. But one of them just so happened to be when we were crossing the Drake Passage, that like insane, crazy, stormy waters.
Yeah.
Between Antarctica and Argentina. And yeah, basically we woke up the next morning and the captain was like, "Hey, what were you doing last night, like out on the bow?" And I looked at him like it was crazy, being like, "I was in my room. What are you talking about?" And as soon as he said, he goes, "I saw you on the bow, and then you were like kind of creepy, like staring at my window." And as soon as he said that, I remembered it like it was a dream. And that's usually how my sleepwalking works.
What?
I remember it like it's a dream, and the next morning I can tell you what I did. I just couldn't control it. And
So
sure
you're
enough,
like outside, like out on the bow of the boat.
on like full on Titanic style, like holding on to the bow. I remember there was like spotlights, and these boats have spotlights at night, watching for like icebergs. And a big old wave came, splashed the ship, sprayed me, and that's when I didn't wake up, but that's when I went back. And so when he told us this story, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I think he's telling the truth." And Jessica was like, "Nah, no way." And we went back to our room and found all my wet clothes there next to the bed.
Oh my God, dude. That'd be a bad time to fall overboard in Antarctica in the middle of the
Jess,
night.
Jess was pretty
Oh my
upset with
God,
me.
dude.
From that
That is
point on, she took like
crazy.
these metal water bottles that they had gifted us, and she would line them by the door as like an alarm in case I
An
slept
alarm.
walk out the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's insane. So when does the cartoon, that's TBD on when it comes out, and the book comes out when with Nat Geo?
The book, we did do a book together with Disney and National Geographic. That's our kids' book, The Bucket List Family, something of an origin story. Really proud of the way it turned out. And that launches in October. And we go the first week of October for a launch event at Walt Disney World for that.
Are these the characters you are or will be in the cartoon as well, or is it like different style
Yeah, it was really
characters?
it was because at first we didn't plan on doing a kids book. It was part of a deal that we did with Disney and National Geographic as they were looking at like the production of the cartoon, saying, "Let's do a kids book first, and it won't be time or money lost because you'll go through the effort of designing not just the characters but the world and what's the story like and how much is it based off of your true stories or not." Like we were able to do all of that pre-production work and put it into a book on our way towards the cartoon.
Unreal. Well, congrats on that. Well, I would tell you, I usually I end these things with a couple questions. One, I usually say, "What's next for you guys?" But I think you got your hands full. You've covered
That's
the
it.
bucket
That's
list
it. We're
collection,
gonna do our best.
launching a
We're gonna-
hospitality brand, launching a book, launching a cartoon, and I'm sure more stuff to come. We'll look out for all that.
We're here. We're full.
Yeah, I would say so. And then the second one, I'm really interested. I ask everyone this question who comes on the pod, especially if they've been to a bunch of places. And I think you guys have been to over 100 countries. If your passport only worked, and you got to answer for Jess and the kids too. If your passport only worked and you could only live or travel in 3 countries for the rest of your lives, what would those countries be?
Oh, great questions. Okay, so Jessica is gonna say New Zealand. She absolutely loves New Zealand. Our oldest daughter, Dorothy, her answer would be Japan. Um, our middle child, Manila, he's going to say the Maldives. He's bougie like that. And then our youngest, Callie, will say Australia. He really loved the wildlife of Australia.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. And then for me,
You got to tell me your top 3. That's good that we got everyone's favorite, but like if you had 3 that you had to stick with for the rest of your life, assuming the fam was on board.
you know what? I might go. Oh goodness, I'm struggling to choose between because I would choose a tropical place. Maldives does come to mind, or Indonesia. I'm basically thinking of places that have great wildlife and great surfing. So I probably would pick one of those. Let's call it Indonesia for that one. And then for sure, it was such a special place in our hearts for Africa. So I would probably go with Tanzania for that one.
Yep.
And then the third and final place would, yeah, I'd probably give shout out to New Zealand so I could go hang out with my wife.
So no US, no Hawaii.
Oh, I mean, no, I wasn't even considering them as an option. Clearly, like we love the US and chose Hawaii as our home. But yeah, I'll give the attention to other places outside the US and honestly, man, Mexico does not get enough attention. The
I
more and more
know.
you get to know Mexico, it's Awesome.
Mexico's on my top 3. Mexico, the crazy thing about Mexico is like, it's the place that Americans go the most, and yet they all go to the same places over and over. And Mexico is just like unlimited incredible places.
Like I went to like the touristy spots in Mexico and I was like, you know what? Mexico's not for me. Don't really love it. Like there's nothing too special about it. And then I started to like really explore Mexico. And now, like I just said, it's shot up to my top 3 of like, my goodness, the nature, the wildlife, the people, the food, oh goodness. Like and it's got great surf. Great surf.
Any favorite spots in Mexico off the beaten path that you're especially excited about?
I really appreciate everything that is the Sea of Cortez. Up and down the Baja Peninsula is probably my favorite region.
Sea of Cortez is just, in addition to the killer whales, they're just one of the residents. But like that place, I've never been, but I've heard it's just like the most like marine life rich place on earth.
100%. I made it sound like we struck out for 6 days, but those 6 days were full of wildlife and adventure, just not the orcas that we were seeking. Right. Really, really cool spot out down there.
Amazing. All right, Garrett. Well, thanks for coming on the pod. Come back in a year. Give us an update on all this stuff. Hopefully we'll be live with the cartoon.
In person at one of the bucket list islands.
Yeah, I like that. We'll record on location.
Update. Yeah, exactly. Thanks for all you do. You guys you specifically and Matador, you guys have been really, really just a positive influence for our family, brought us great opportunities. It was really fun, that commercial we shot together for Jeep. We got to sit down and watch it together as a family just last week. And the kids were really proud of it. Manila, there's a part where he does like a cool flip off a sand dune. And he was like,
yeah.
I mean, I do my best to film at quality, but not to your level of quality. So for him to see himself doing like a cool flip in ultra like slow motion, he kept being like, rewind it. He thought he looked so.
That's awesome. I love
it. It was a positive experience for us to create it, and we're really happy with the outcome. So
cool. Glad to hear it.
When the time comes.
All right, Garrett. Happy travels. Congrats on everything. We'll talk soon.
Thanks for what you do. All right, bye.
Creator, the podcast, is produced by Matador Network. We are a leading global travel publisher focused on travel and adventure. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe. Every week, I interview a new top creator. New episodes are released every Tuesday on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere podcasts are found. Thanks for listening.